The stars stretched endlessly around Valoria Prime, painting the sky with streaks of gold and silver that seemed to whisper of distant worlds and unseen wonders. From her throne, high in the crystal citadel, Queen Lysira gazed out at the shimmering horizon. She was young, wise beyond her years, and her mind carried the weight of her people's hopes and fears. Yet beneath her composed exterior, there was a quiet curiosity that no courtly ceremony or diplomatic negotiation could satisfy. It was that curiosity that led her to him, a human named Ethan Corwin, who had arrived on her planet as part of a peace delegation. Ethan was not what one would expect of a being from another world. He was unassuming, modest in appearance, and seemingly fragile when placed alongside Valoria's towering and majestic citizens. His eyes, however, held a depth that intrigued Lysira. There was intelligence there, a spark that suggested he saw far more than he let on. Even the subtle tilt of his head when observing the alien architecture of the palace revealed a mind that questioned everything, yet respected the elegance of difference. The first meeting had been formal, filled with gestures of diplomacy and ceremonial greetings, but Lysira had noticed the small things, the way Ethan listened to the translators with patience, the quiet confidence in his tone, and the way he smiled with genuine warmth when introduced to her council. His simplicity, she thought, was a rarity among humans. Most of their kind were brash, loud, or desperate to impress. But Ethan was steady, calm, and unpretentious. As the weeks passed, Ethan became a familiar presence in the Crystal Citadel. He attended meetings, observed Valoria's governance, and interacted with Lysira in ways that were both respectful and refreshingly honest. The court was puzzled. Many whispered that the queen had chosen a partner who could never match the responsibility and power of Valoria's throne. Advisors fretted over his human limitations, citing stories of humans who were weak, fragile, or incapable of understanding the complexities of interstellar politics. Yet, Lysira ignored their doubts. There was something in Ethan that could not be measured by strength, status, or lineage. She felt it in the way he listened, in the subtle decisions he made, and in the quiet courage he carried without fanfare. One evening, after a day of discussions with the council, Lysira invited Ethan to walk with her along the observation terraces. The twin moons of Valoria hung low in the sky, casting a soft silver glow across the city below. The human looked out over the horizon, silent at first, and then spoke with a thoughtfulness that made her pause. "You see beauty in order," he said softly, gesturing toward the city. "Yet you also see chaos in what others would call perfection. It's not fear you feel, it's responsibility." Lysira stopped in her steps, studying him. No human had ever spoken with such clarity about her inner thoughts. It was as if he understood the burdens of her crown, the constant pressure to act wisely for the good of her people, and the loneliness that came with power. "You see too much," she said, half in amusement, half in awe, or perhaps you see too little, depending on the perspective. Ethan smiled, but it was not a boastful smile. It was quiet, patient, and honest. "Perhaps, or perhaps, I simply see what is important." Lysira's curiosity deepened. She found herself wanting to know more about him. Not just his mind, but his heart, his history, and the choices that had shaped him into the human before her. Over time, their conversations moved from diplomacy and observation to stories of distant planets, human customs, and memories of home. Ethan spoke of his world not with longing, but with clarity, as if he had accepted it fully and yet carried it within him wherever he went. Lysira realized that this was another form of strength. While humans might lack the raw physical power of Valoria's warriors, they possessed resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity that could surpass even the most advanced alien technology. When the subject of marriage arose, it shocked the court. Lysira declared her intention to unite with Ethan in a bond of partnership, not simply as a political strategy, but as a genuine choice. Her advisors voiced concern, warning of the human's limitations and the possible scandal among Valoria's elite. Some whispered that she was naive, that she had been charmed by a being who could never truly understand the weight of alien royalty. Yet, Lysira's resolve did not waver. She had seen the quiet strength in him, the intelligence that could navigate even the most complex systems, and the courage that did not need recognition. She trusted in what humans could become, rather than what they appeared to be. The wedding was a spectacle of light and elegance. Valoria's towers gleamed, and the ceremonial halls filled with citizens from across the star system. Ethan walked beside Lysira, calm, composed, and utterly human in his simplicity. Yet as he took her hand, a subtle energy seemed to pulse through the room. It was not magic, nor was it technology. It was something that could not be explained, something that hinted at power hidden beneath the surface. Those who were close enough noticed it, a faint hum in the air, as if the stars themselves had acknowledged his presence. Lysira's heart quickened. She had chosen this human, not knowing the true depths of his abilities, and yet she felt an instinctive certainty that he was far more than he appeared. Life in the palace after the wedding was calm, almost deceptively ordinary. Ethan adapted to the alien ways with grace, learning their language, technology, and customs with remarkable speed. He spent hours in the archives poring over records of diplomacy and interstellar conflict, absorbing knowledge that would take most beings years to understand. Yet he never flaunted his intelligence. Instead, he used it quietly, solving problems with subtlety, offering suggestions that often went unnoticed until they proved invaluable. Lysira watched him, a mixture of admiration and fascination growing each day. There were moments, small and fleeting, when Ethan's true potential slipped through the cracks of ordinary perception. A council meeting where he predicted a strategic flaw before anyone else noticed it. A sudden emergency on the palace ship where he acted instinctively to save lives. A glance at alien technology that allowed him to operate devices without instructions. Each time, Lysira wondered how a being who seemed so ordinary could achieve the extraordinary. She confronted him one evening, curiosity overtaking restraint. "Ethan, you are not like other humans. There is something in you, something I do not yet understand." He smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and amusement. "I am as human as any other. Perhaps it is not power that you see, but perspective." Lysira frowned, unsure of what he meant, yet she did not push further. There was a patience in Ethan that matched her own, a calm confidence that suggested he knew when the right moment would come to reveal himself. For now she accepted the mystery, trusting that time would show her the truth. And so, life continued in the Crystal Citadel. The city hummed with energy. Diplomats moved across its gleaming halls, and the stars above continued their silent vigil. Yet beneath the surface of ordinary life, a quiet tension simmered. The universe beyond Valoria Prime was vast and unpredictable, filled with threats that could not be seen or controlled. And while the court debated and planned, Lysira sensed that Ethan's presence was not merely companionship. It was a promise that humanity, often underestimated and overlooked, held the capacity to rise above expectation, to face challenges that even alien might struggle to meet. The first hint of the universe's coming storm appeared as a distant signal, a fleet moving across the void with a speed and coordination that alarmed the Valorian Council. While the aliens argued over strategies, Ethan observed silently, his mind calculating possibilities that none of them considered. Lysira noticed the intensity in his gaze, the subtle tightening of his jaw, and for the first time she glimpsed the power he kept hidden, not through arrogance, but through control. She realized then that her choice had been more than an act of curiosity or compassion. She had chosen a partner who would one day stand as equal not only to her, but to the challenges of the galaxy itself. And though Ethan remained a man of simple appearance, she now understood that simplicity could mask the extraordinary. The universe was about to test them both, and she could not help but feel a mixture of excitement and fear at the thought of what was to come. As the moons rose high over Valoria Prime, casting silver shadows across the towers of the citadel, Lysira looked at Ethan with a newfound certainty. She had married a human, yes, but she had married a being whose true power had not yet revealed itself. And when it finally did, it would change everything, not just for Valoria Prime, but for the galaxy itself. The stars, eternal and unblinking, seemed to whisper promises of what was to come, and Lysera knew, with a certainty she had never felt before, that she and her human were on the brink of something extraordinary. The calm that had settled over Valoria Prime after the wedding began to waver. The palace corridors, once filled with ceremonial elegance and laughter, now echoed with murmurs of concern. Scouts had returned from the outer systems, reporting the movement of a fleet unlike any the Valorian Council had ever encountered. It was massive, coordinated, and aggressive, a force that struck without warning, leaving entire outposts abandoned and destroyed. Queen Lysera called an emergency council meeting. The chamber, usually a place of orderly debate, buzzed with tension. Valoria's generals and advisors argued over defensive strategies, debating whether to confront the fleet directly or retreat to fortified positions. Their voices rose and fell like a storm, each argument more urgent than the last. Lysera listened carefully, her hands resting on the smooth surface of her throne. Beside her, Ethan remained quiet, observing every detail with a calm intensity that seemed almost unnatural. "This fleet is too large," one general argued, pacing the floor. "Even if we mobilize every warship and station every soldier, it will take days to assemble a defense, and by then, our cities will already be under attack." Another advisor shook his head. "We cannot flee. Valoria Prime is the heart of this star system. Abandoning it would be a betrayal to our people and to our allies. We must find a way to strike before they reach us." Lysera's gaze shifted to Ethan. He had been silent, as if listening not just to their words, but to the patterns beneath them. The movement of fleets, the capabilities of their technology, the potential weaknesses in the enemy's strategy. His human composure seemed to absorb the chaos around him rather than be affected by it. "You see a solution," Lysera said softly, almost as a test. "Tell me what you think, Ethan."
"You have observed these reports longer than any of us."
Ethan's eyes, dark and steady, scanned the holographic projection of the incoming fleet. "They are moving in a formation designed to overwhelm the front lines," he said, "but they are predictable in their pattern. They rely heavily on coordination and timing. If we disrupt their flow, even temporarily, it can create openings to strike back strategically, rather than blindly defending ourselves." The room fell silent. Generals exchanged skeptical glances. Humans were rarely credited with understanding interstellar tactics, let alone devising strategies that could rival Valoria's seasoned military minds. Yet something in Ethan's calm, unwavering tone demanded attention. Lysera nodded. "Then tell me how we disrupt them. We have no time to waste." Ethan moved closer to the holographic map, tracing the paths of the enemy ships with his fingers. "We don't need to fight all at once. A few of our smaller strike teams, equipped with energy disruptors and rapid response shields, can target key vessels. If we disable their central command nodes, even temporarily, the rest of the fleet will falter. Chaos spreads faster than control in their formation, and we can exploit that to protect the cities and evacuate civilians if necessary." A murmur ran through the council. It was daring, almost reckless, but it had precision, intelligence, and a calm confidence that seemed impossible for someone so young and human. Lysera felt a surge of pride. She had always sensed Ethan's potential, but hearing him speak with such authority, devising strategies that challenged centuries of Valorian military doctrine, was exhilarating. Preparations began immediately. Valoria's engineers modified ships to carry the specialized energy disruptors Ethan had outlined. Strike teams trained rapidly under his guidance, learning new maneuvers that required intuition, timing, and trust. Lysera observed quietly, fascinated by the ease with which Ethan adapted to alien technology. He operated devices without hesitation, anticipating responses before the machines even completed their cycles. The day of the attack arrived with little warning. The skies above Valoria Prime darkened with the shadow of the incoming fleet. Citizens fled to underground shelters and fortified districts, while the palace's defensive stations powered up in preparation for the inevitable confrontation. Lysera stood on the observation terrace, her hands gripping the crystalline railing, and watched as Ethan directed operations with calm authority. "Focus on the lead ships," he instructed through the comm system. "We must fracture their formation, strike simultaneously, and pull back quickly. Timing is everything." The first wave of Valorian strike teams launched into space. Ethan's strategy unfolded flawlessly. Using the energy disruptors, the teams targeted the fleet's command nodes, sending pulses that disabled communication and navigation for several enemy ships. Chaos spread instantly. Vessels collided, formations broke, and the once feared fleet stumbled under its own weight. From her vantage point, Lysera could see the human brilliance at work. Ethan moved between stations, monitoring progress, making split-second adjustments, and coordinating maneuvers with a precision that left even Valoria's most experienced generals in awe. At one point, an unexpected surge threatened to overwhelm the palace's shields. Without hesitation, Ethan accessed the energy matrix, rerouting power with a fluidity that seemed instinctive rather than learned. The shield stabilized, protecting thousands of lives. For the first time, the Council began to realize that Ethan was not the simple human they had assumed. His understanding of technology, strategy, and leadership exceeded anything they had expected from a species considered inferior by Valorian standards. Whispers ran through the ranks. Perhaps the Queen had chosen wisely. Perhaps humans were not as limited as legend suggested. The battle raged for hours. Valoria's forces, guided by Ethan, executed hit-and-run tactics, disabling enemy ships one by one while minimizing their own losses. Lysera's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and admiration. She had trusted this human, but seeing his abilities revealed under the pressure of war was more awe-inspiring than she could have imagined. During a particularly tense moment, a massive enemy vessel breached the outer defenses, firing a devastating energy beam toward the capital city. Without hesitation, Ethan activated the palace's auxiliary energy conduits, channeling immense power into a focused barrier. The beam struck the shield with a blinding flash of light, splitting harmlessly around the palace and dissipating into the void. Lysera felt the force of the energy hum through the floor beneath her feet, and yet Ethan stood calm, almost serene, guiding every action with unmatched focus. After the initial assault, the enemy fleet faltered completely. Some ships retreated, others were disabled entirely. Valoria's defenders, inspired by Ethan's leadership, pushed forward with renewed vigor, securing critical positions and stabilizing the planet's defenses. The warlord who had planned to conquer Valoria Prime now faced a coordinated, intelligent resistance unlike anything he had anticipated. When the battle subsided, Lysera finally approached Ethan. The council members had departed to assess losses and rebuild defenses, leaving the two alone on the observation terrace. The twin moons bathed the city in soft silver light, and the distant stars sparkled like witnesses to the events that had just unfolded. "You exceeded even my expectations," Lysera said quietly. Her voice carried awe, respect, and the faint tremor of relief. "I knew you were remarkable, Ethan, but I could not have imagined this." Ethan turned to her, his expression calm but touched by the gravity of their victory. "I only did what I thought was necessary. Valoria Prime deserved protection, and your people trusted us. I would not fail them." Lysera studied him, seeing not just a human who had proven himself in battle, but a partner who embodied resilience, intelligence, and courage. She realized that the simplicity she had once admired in him was not absence of strength. It was restraint, a quiet control over abilities that could have easily become arrogance if misused.
"You kept your power hidden," she said.
"You moved quietly, but every action was deliberate. You were never just a human in their eyes, or even in mine. You were something more." Ethan smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and understanding.
Perhaps. But the real power is in the choices we make."
Strength alone is meaningless without purpose. Lysira nodded, feeling a profound sense of partnership. She had chosen this human not for what he appeared to be, but for what he could become. And now she understood that his true potential had only begun to emerge. Together they had defended the planet, outsmarted an enemy that seemed unstoppable, and shown that humanity, often underestimated, could rise to meet challenges no one expected. That night, as the city below recovered from the chaos, Lysira walked with Ethan through the palace gardens. The air was cool, scented with alien flora that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Citizens, unaware of the full extent of the battle, would speak of bravery and strategy, but the queen knew the truth. The victory belonged to the human she had chosen, a being whose intellect and courage had turned the tide of war. "Do you ever wonder," Lysira asked softly, "what else you are capable of?" Ethan's gaze lifted to the stars. "I do," he admitted, "but some things reveal themselves only when the time is right. The universe has a way of testing us, teaching us patience, and preparing us for what lies ahead." Lysira smiled, feeling both relief and anticipation. She had witnessed a glimpse of what humans could achieve, and she knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of unknown threats, and the challenges ahead would demand more than courage. They would demand ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet brilliance that Ethan embodied. For the first time, she truly understood why she had chosen him, and why the Council's doubts had meant nothing. This human, unassuming and deliberate, had shown her the true meaning of strength. And as the twin moons reflected in Ethan's eyes, Lysira felt a certainty she had never known. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and together they would face the universe as equals, ready for whatever trials awaited them. The quiet after the first battle was only an illusion. Across the void of space, the warlord who had attacked Valoria Prime was not defeated, merely delayed. Reports came in that his fleet was regrouping, repairing damaged vessels, and calling for reinforcements from neighboring systems. The scale of the threat had grown far beyond what anyone on Valoria Prime had anticipated. Queen Lysira stood on the observation terrace once again, watching the horizon. The stars, which had seemed so distant and calm before, now felt closer, almost ominous. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders more heavily than ever. Beside her, Ethan remained quiet, analyzing incoming data on the palace's holographic display. The calm that had defined him in the first attack was now accompanied by a sharp intensity, as if he could see not just the present, but every possible future. "The fleet is larger than we thought," Ethan said, his voice steady but firm. "Their reinforcements are faster than our scouts predicted. If we rely solely on the same tactics as before, we risk losing ground, and potentially the planet itself." Lysira nodded. "Then we must adapt. Tell me what we need to do." Ethan traced the paths of the enemy fleet with his fingers, his eyes moving faster than the light around him. "We cannot win by force alone. They are too numerous and too well equipped. But we can exploit their weaknesses: timing, formation, and overconfidence. We need to strike at their command core before they reach the planet, and then use deception to scatter their forces. That is our only chance." The council was called once more, and Ethan laid out his strategy. He spoke not as a human guest or advisor, but as a commander with insight that even Valoria's generals could not match. His understanding of alien technology, human ingenuity, and interstellar combat created a plan that seemed almost impossible. But every detail was precise, every step calculated. "Strike teams will engage smaller enemy groups at key points," Ethan explained. "We will disable their command nodes using targeted energy pulses. Meanwhile, decoy ships will create false formations, drawing their main fleet into traps. Timing must be perfect. Any deviation and the operation could fail." Some Valorians still doubted. Humans had rarely survived in battles beyond their home systems, and the sheer audacity of Ethan's plan was unlike anything they had attempted. But Lysira, having witnessed his abilities firsthand, trusted him completely. She could see the calm confidence in his eyes, the clarity in his mind, and the patience that allowed him to prepare for every possible outcome. The first wave of operations began at dusk. Valoria's strike teams moved into position under Ethan's guidance. The decoy ships were deployed, moving in patterns designed to confuse the enemy. As predicted, the warlord's fleet reacted immediately, following the decoys and leaving gaps that Valoria's forces could exploit. Ethan remained at the central command station, monitoring every movement. His mind worked faster than anyone could follow, predicting enemy maneuvers, recalculating strategies, and issuing commands with flawless precision. In moments of crisis, when a ship teetered on the edge of destruction, Ethan would intervene, rerouting energy, stabilizing shields, or manually guiding pilots through complex maneuvers. Each action was deliberate, showing a mastery over technology and strategy that made even Valoria's most seasoned generals pause in awe. The turning point came when the main enemy fleet reached a narrow sector near the planet's orbit. The decoys had drawn them into a trap. Valoria's forces, guided by Ethan's calculations, struck with perfect timing. Energy pulses disabled the enemy's command vessels, causing chaos to ripple through the formation. Ships collided, fired blindly, and in some cases turned on one another in confusion. Amidst the battle, Ethan's hidden abilities began to emerge more visibly. He could manipulate energy fields directly, enhancing Valoria's shields and neutralizing enemy weapons before they struck. He moved with fluid precision, calculating trajectories, predicting outcomes, and coordinating teams in a way that seemed almost supernatural. Valoria's council watched in stunned silence, realizing that the human they had underestimated was now the fulcrum upon which the battle turned. Even Lysira, who had known Ethan longer than anyone, was taken aback. She had seen his intelligence and calm under pressure, but the scale of his control over the battlefield was unprecedented. He was no longer the simple human she had first met. He was a force that blended strategy, intuition, and raw ability in a way that no Valorian could rival. As the battle raged on, an enemy warship broke through the outer defenses and targeted the palace directly. Panic threatened to spread among the defenders, but Ethan reacted instantly. He extended his energy manipulation to reinforce the palace's shields, diverting immense power through circuits designed to handle only a fraction of the load. The shields shimmered, glowing with a brilliance that held back the devastating beam. Civilians in nearby shelters felt a subtle vibration in the ground as energy pulsed through the city, and yet Ethan remained steady, guiding every action with focus that never wavered. Lysira approached him, her voice carrying over the comms. "Ethan, they are too strong. Can we hold them?" He did not look at her, his attention fully on the battlefield. "We will hold them. But we must strike decisively now. Every second counts. Trust me." With a single command, Ethan orchestrated the final phase of the operation. Strike teams moved into position, energy pulses were synchronized perfectly, and decoy ships lured the remaining enemy vessels into deadly traps. One by one, the warlord's ships were disabled, retreating, or destroyed. Valoria's forces, inspired and coordinated like never before, turned what had seemed an impossible battle into a resounding victory. When the dust settled, the palace's observation terraces overlooked a battlefield of silent, disabled ships floating in space. The skies, once darkened with threat, now gleamed with the calm of victory. Citizens below began to emerge from shelters, witnessing the aftermath of a battle that would be remembered for generations. Lysira finally stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes wide with awe. You saved us all. I knew you were extraordinary, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Ethan turned to her, a faint smile crossing his face. "I did what had to be done. The true power of humans is not in strength alone, but in adaptability, determination, and the ability to act when others hesitate." Lysira studied him, realizing that every moment she had spent observing him, every quiet conversation, every subtle gesture, had been a glimpse into the potential that had now fully revealed itself. He was human, yes, but he was also the embodiment of what her species had long underestimated, a being capable of changing the fate of entire worlds with intellect, courage, and precision. The council gathered around, expressing gratitude, amazement, and newfound respect. Even the generals who had doubted him were forced to acknowledge Ethan's brilliance. The human had not only saved the planet, but had redefined the way Valoria understood power, strategy, and leadership. That night, Lysera and Ethan walked through the palace gardens, the air cool and fragrant with alien flora. The twin moons reflected off the crystalline pathways, casting soft light on their faces. Citizens celebrated quietly in the distance, but for the Queen, the most important revelation was the one she shared privately with her human companion. "You have shown them, shown me, the true strength of humanity," she said softly. "I always knew there was more to you than met the eye, but this is beyond expectation." Ethan looked at the stars, calm yet reflective. "Humans are underestimated because we are patient. We observe, learn, and act when the moment is right. Power is not always visible until it is needed." Lysera nodded, feeling the depth of his words. She understood now that their partnership was not only a union of hearts, but also a merging of purpose. Together, they could face challenges that neither species could confront alone. In the days that followed, Valoria Prime began rebuilding and reinforcing its defenses. The threat from the warlord had been delayed, not eliminated. An intelligence report suggested he would return stronger than before. Yet with Ethan by her side, Lysera felt a growing confidence. The human she had chosen was no longer just a partner or advisor. He was a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when underestimated potential was allowed to flourish. Even in private moments, Ethan continued to reveal layers of his abilities. He could sense energy fluctuations, anticipate problems before they arose, and find solutions that combined human creativity with alien technology. The court began to rely on him not only for strategy, but for insight, guidance, and reassurance. His presence shifted the way Valoria Prime viewed humanity, not as fragile allies, but as beings capable of brilliance, resilience, and leadership on a galactic scale. One evening, Lysera watched Ethan standing alone on the observation terrace, looking out at the stars with quiet intensity. She approached him, her hand brushing against his. "Do you ever think about what is coming next?" she asked. Ethan turned, his gaze steady. "Every day. The galaxy is vast and unpredictable. But I know one thing. As long as we act with purpose, courage, and intelligence, we can face anything."
And we will.
Lysera felt a surge of pride and certainty. She had chosen this human not for what he appeared to be, but for what he could become. Now, having witnessed the full emergence of his abilities, she knew their union was not just personal. It was a force that could shape the fate of worlds. The twin moons reflected in Ethan's eyes, and Lysera understood that the future held challenges far greater than the first battle. Yet she no longer felt fear. Together they were not just queen and human. They were partners in a galaxy that had only begun to recognize the hidden strength of humanity. And as the stars shimmered above, silent witnesses to the unfolding story, Lysera felt the stirring of hope, determination, and awe. The human she had once thought simple had revealed a power that would forever change Valoria Prime, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The warning signals came in the dead of night. Sensors across Valoria Prime flickered with the approach of a massive fleet, larger and more coordinated than anything Ethan or the Valorian Council had ever encountered. The warlord had returned, this time bringing allies from systems that had previously avoided his conquests. His army was brutal, efficient, and merciless, a true threat to the heart of Valoria Prime. Queen Lysera stood at the observation terrace, her cloak catching the faint silver light of the twin moons. Beside her, Ethan watched the readings with calm focus, his face composed, but his mind moving at a speed no Valorian could match. He had studied every possible scenario, anticipated countless outcomes, and yet the enormity of the enemy's numbers reminded even him that this battle would be unlike any before.
They are stronger than before, Lysira said softly.
And they will not hesitate. Ethan's eyes, steady and calculating, met hers. We will be ready. Humans survive where others fail because we adapt, learn, and act with purpose. This is no different. Preparations began immediately. Valoria's fleet was mobilized, with strike teams positioned strategically across the outer sectors. Defensive stations bristled with energy shields, weapons arrays, and rapid response teams. Civilians were evacuated to deep shelters, and communications were sent to nearby allied planets for support. Yet the tension was palpable. Even with all their resources, the scale of the enemy threat seemed overwhelming. Ethan moved among the command centers, guiding teams with quiet authority. He didn't simply issue orders, he predicted outcomes, recalculated strategies in real time, and ensured that every human and Valorian under his guidance understood their role perfectly. The generals who had once doubted him now watched in awe as he synchronized an operation that seemed almost impossible. The first wave of the enemy fleet struck at dawn. Fire tore across space, explosions lighting the void like artificial suns. Valoria's defenses held, but the cost was immediate. Ships were damaged, shields faltered, and pilots faced moments of peril that tested every skill they had learned. Ethan moved like a conductor, orchestrating energy flows, redirecting power and stabilizing shields with precision that left Valoria's best engineers speechless. A massive enemy vessel, larger than any Valoria had encountered, broke through the outer perimeter and charged toward the planet. Panic threatened to ripple through the fleet, but Ethan remained calm. He accessed the palace's auxiliary systems, channeling energy with a strength and focus that seemed almost inhuman. The shields flared, absorbing the enemy's assault while simultaneously launching countermeasures that disabled several smaller ships. Lysira, watching from the terrace, felt a mix of fear and awe. The human she had married, the one she had believed simple and unassuming, was now the linchpin of their survival. Every calculation, every command, every action was guided by a mind and intuition that no Valorian had seen before. His true power, fully realized, was not just in strength or technology, but in the combination of intellect, courage, and human adaptability. The battle escalated further. Enemy forces coordinated attacks on multiple fronts, attempting to divide Valoria's defenders, yet Ethan anticipated each move, countering with strategies that seemed to anticipate the enemy's thoughts. Strike teams executed complex maneuvers, decoys lured enemy ships into traps, and energy pulses disabled command nodes with flawless timing. The enemy's confidence faltered as chaos spread through their fleet, and for the first time they realized they were facing more than just a planet. They were facing a human mind capable of outthinking an entire armada. Lysira joined Ethan in the command center as the battle reached its climax. The screens showed ships exploding, energy fields pulsing, and the enemy struggling to maintain formation. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice steady but her heart pounding. Ethan's eyes never left the data streams.
"We're close."
The main command ship is exposed. If we disable it, the rest will fall into disarray.
Timing is critical. The strike teams moved with synchronized precision. Energy pulses struck the enemy command vessel, disrupting its systems. Explosions rippled across its surface, and chaos spread through the enemy formation like wildfire. Ships collided, weapons misfired, and coordination dissolved entirely. Valoria's forces, inspired and guided by Ethan, pressed the advantage, striking with efficiency and confidence. Then came the final moment. The warlord himself appeared on a massive vessel, attempting to regroup his remaining fleet for a decisive strike. Ethan assessed the situation instantly. He calculated trajectories, predicted movements, and issued commands that orchestrated every available resource. Valoria's ships converged, shields held firm, and energy pulses neutralized the warlord's vessels in a display of strategy and control that left even the most veteran generals in disbelief. Lysira watched, her heart swelling with pride. Ethan's power was fully revealed, and it was not raw strength alone that secured victory. It was his intelligence, courage, and the ability to act decisively when others hesitated. The enemy fleet, once a seemingly unstoppable force, was shattered. Retreating ships fled into the void, and Valoria Prime stood victorious, battered, but alive. As the dust of battle settled, the council gathered to assess the aftermath. Ships floated in orbit, some damaged, some destroyed. Citizens began to emerge from shelters, witnessing a victory that would be celebrated for generations. Yet it was not the explosions or the tactical maneuvers that drew attention. It was the presence of a human who had changed the course of history, a human who had proven that underestimated potential could reshape the galaxy. Lysira approached Ethan, her eyes reflecting both awe and gratitude. "You have done what no one thought possible," she said. "I knew there was more to you, but this is extraordinary." Ethan shook his head, calm and measured. "I did what needed to be done. Humans survive because we adapt, because we learn, and because we act when it matters most. The real power is not in what we have. It is in what we choose to do with it." Lysira smiled, understanding the depth of his words. She realized that their union had never been about appearances or expectations. It had been about recognizing potential, trusting it, and allowing it to flourish. In choosing Ethan, she had chosen not just a partner, but a being capable of facing challenges that could change the fate of worlds. In the days that followed, Valoria Prime began to rebuild. Damage was repaired, defenses were strengthened, and citizens celebrated a victory that was as much about hope as it was about survival. Ethan's abilities were no longer hidden. His strategic brilliance, energy manipulation, and calm authority became a symbol of humanity's potential in the galaxy. The court, which had once doubted him, now relied on his guidance. Valoria's generals and engineers observed his methods, learning from his approach to technology and strategy. It became clear that humans were not fragile or limited. They were adaptable, innovative, and capable of remarkable feats when given the opportunity. Lysira and Ethan stood together on the observation terrace one evening, watching the twin moons reflect across the city's repaired towers. "Do you ever tire of this?" Lysira asked softly. "Of the battles, the strategy, the responsibility?" Ethan's eyes met hers, calm and resolute. "The battles are never-ending, but each challenge teaches us something. Every victory, every setback, every choice shapes what we become. I am not weary. I am ready for whatever comes next."
Lysira felt a swell of admiration and certainty.
She had known that humanity held potential, but she had never imagined it could manifest so completely. Her human had shown that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the greatest odds. Together they had defended a world, outwitted a formidable enemy, and proven that underestimated beings could rise to meet any challenge. The galaxy, once skeptical of humans, would now watch them differently. Reports of Valoria Prime's defense spread to neighboring systems, carrying the story of a human who had turned the tide of battle and reshaped expectations. Humans, often dismissed as weak or naive, were now recognized as a force capable of brilliance, resilience, and leadership. Lysira turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "You were never simple," she said. "And now everyone knows it." Ethan smiled, but it was a quiet, humble smile. Power is not always visible. Sometimes it must be revealed in the moment it is needed most. Together, they looked out at the stars, silent witnesses to the unfolding story. The universe was vast, full of dangers and wonders alike, but Lysira no longer felt fear. With Ethan by her side, she knew they could face anything. His true power had emerged, and it had changed not only Valoria Prime, but the galaxy itself. As the night deepened, Lysira rested her hand on Ethan's arm. They stood together, queen and human, partners in a universe that had underestimated humanity for too long. And in that quiet moment, under the light of twin moons and countless stars, they understood that the future was theirs to shape, and that the human potential, once hidden, had finally been revealed in its full glory. The stars above twinkled as if acknowledging their triumph, silent witnesses to a story of courage, intelligence, and the extraordinary strength of a species long underestimated. Humanity, through one man, had shown the galaxy what it was truly capable of, and for Lysera, for Ethan, and for Valoria Prime, that was only the beginning.